Denver vows to take a hard line against riots. We look at whether the city's threats carry real weight and the real cost of the damage done in town. The governor says he hopes there's enough evidence to convict the police officers involved in Elijah McClain's death, while we take a deeper look at how that young man's death went from getting passing notice in Colorado a year ago to now making national news. Black Coloradans take the mic to speak to their experience in this moment in history. And a next viewer asks the question, when will the smoke clear from the Front Range? The answer, and plenty more questions, next. Denver city leaders are vowing not to let this city go the way of a Seattle or Portland, where riots like the one we saw over the weekend become a frequent occurrence. Leaders of the Black Lives protests in Denver quickly distanced themselves from that different group that came out over the weekend with the express purpose of violence. Our Steve Stager covered the events over the weekend and looks at whether the city's tough talk has any teeth.
We will take those who break windows, who inflict damage on our buildings, and make sure that they'll be working for quite some time to repay the people of Denver for their damage.
A powerful threat from Denver Mayor Michael Hancock following a weekend of violence. People calling for an end to the Denver Police Department, then throwing fireworks at officers, smashing windows, and lighting fires on city property. In the end, police arrested 12 people and cited one.
Anyone who's convicted in the wake of these vandalism attacks could very well have to foot the bill, not just for what they can prove was done by them, but for the whole amount of restitution.
9 News legal analyst Scott Robinson says while the mayor has no power personally to enforce that threat of making people pay, Colorado law requires restitution in criminal convictions. Anyone convicted would have to show a good faith effort to pay.
Even if you aren't able to pay while you're under the supervision of the court, it's probably going to be a debt that could follow you the rest of your life until paid.
A spokesman for Denver DA Beth McCann told me this afternoon that her office is in full support of the mayor and she will prosecute any cases she can that come her way. Hancock has said he has similar assurances from the city attorney and, if needed, the U.S. attorney. As for the question of who's behind all of this violence and destruction, one of the leaders of Black Lives Matter 5280, Dr. April Alexander, assured on Twitter it is not her organization. Just interesting how these people aren't really part of the movement, she wrote, saying Black Lives Matter hasn't organized a protest in Denver since May.
We still haven't gotten an estimate from the city just how much this weekend's violence and property damage cost. We did learn that the city has spent about $1.3 million both repairing damage from and preparing buildings for these kinds of violent acts so far this year. Kyle.
And while a lot of the anger was directed at those government buildings, Steve, we saw private businesses damaged as well, and those folks might have a claim against the people who did the damage.
Yeah, and Scott Robinson says that could be handled through this court-ordered restitution, but it was interesting to hear the mayor speak yesterday and say that the city in these cases is going to take the evidence gathered from the people on the ground, the evidence gathered against the people arrested, and give that information to any business owner who may have had property damage so that they then can file a civil claim to try to recoup some of the damage from those who inflicted it.
All right, Steve Stager, thank you very much. It's been 1 year since 23-year-old Elijah McClain was stopped by Aurora police. He had committed no crime. He was stopped simply because officers decided that he looked suspicious. He then begged for his life as they restrained him and he was given ketamine. Elijah McClain went into cardiac arrest and later died. The officers and paramedics involved have not been arrested. For what we think is the first time, today Democratic Governor Jared Polis suggested he hopes that happens.
I have full confidence that this independent process will lead to a prosecution if there is enough evidence to convict. And I really hope there is. The family deserves closure. There's no bringing Elijah back. We need to make sure that his legacy is seared in all of our souls and that it leads to meaningful police reforms like the ones we've already signed. I've already signed in Colorado.
Americans coast to coast now know the name Elijah McClain. Yet it took months for the country to become aware of the 23-year-old's death. Tonight, as we consider the implications of what happened beginning 1 year ago, our Chris Vanderveen takes a look back.
It wasn't a national story, not at first. The trip to the convenience store.
911, what is the address of the emergency?
The 911 call.
Hey, stop right there. He's walking south on Billings Street. He has a mask on.
Okay.
The quick takedown. And the ketamine injection.
Still out.
None of it generated national news stories or viral hashtags. No, his was a story that sat quietly for months until one day in the middle of a pandemic, it erupted. Yet to know the story, one must also know Elijah's story. The 23-year-old with no criminal record was doing nothing illegal that night. In fact, he was buying iced tea. His family say the mask was just what he did at night, even on summer nights. As for the takedown,
Stop, dude.
Police say that action prompted it. What you might have missed, what I missed when I first watched the tape, happened many minutes after the takedown.
So when the ambulance gets here, we're going to go ahead and give us all the cops are okay. Yeah, sounds good. Perfect, dude.
When the officers decided a very much restrained Elijah McClain was so agitated, he needed a sedative known as ketamine. You know that. But what you might not know is that Elijah spent the next 4.5 minutes throwing up and moving just a little, not exactly showing any sign of the extreme or profound agitation that might typically warrant ketamine.
Y'all going to hit him in the right shoulder?
4.5 minutes after asking for it, officers gave Elijah McClain ketamine anyway. 3 days later, in a date now marked on Elijah's obituary, doctors declared him brain dead. Here's the problem, and it's a big one. In November, the coroner decided the cause of Elijah's death was undetermined. That same month, in this letter, the Adams County District Attorney announced no state criminal charges would be filed as a result. And there the story sat for months, occasionally generating a local headline until June. In the aftermath of the death of George Floyd in Minnesota, journalists and activists began looking into past in-custody deaths and found the name Elijah McClain. That month, in the midst of growing protests, Colorado legislators passed a police accountability law. But it would take, in part, a June 20th New York Times story for this story to lead to millions of signatures on a National Justice for Elijah website. Later that month, the governor appointed the state attorney general to review the criminal case, and the U.S. Department of Justice decided it needed to get involved as well. This month, McClain's family filed a civil rights lawsuit, and Aurora announced it will once again review how its police department handled the case. Elijah McClain's family wants more, and you can guarantee 1 year in, this story, their story, his story, is not over. But for now at least, it is no longer just a local story. For Next, this is Chris Vanderveen.
There's a debate over how much, if at all, the ketamine contributed to Elijah McClain's death. The autopsy report said that the amount in his body was not enough to kill him, but it couldn't rule out ketamine as a contributing factor in his death. The state health department announced just over the weekend that it's going to review the use of ketamine in the field. A Coloradan claims that she spoke directly to President Trump about the crowdfunding campaign to build his border wall, the fundraiser that funneled checks to a P.O. box in Castle Rock, the deal that federal prosecutors now say was a scam. Trump administration is currently distancing itself from that We Build the Wall campaign after the indictment of former top advisor Steve Bannon and the Coloradan who's collecting the checks. Acting Homeland Security Secretary Chad Wolf visited that private wall building project last year, was asked about it this weekend.
I wanted to understand how a private organization, if they were going to build this on their own, using their own funding, how it integrated with what CBP was doing on the border. I talked to an engineer, I believe an engineer on site there. We talked about the cameras, the roads, and the other systems that they built. And then I went on my way. So again, I'll continue to say we welcome all that want to be a part of the solution on that southwest border. But I did not endorse any particular one group or another.
Well, you certainly don't welcome the support of scam artists who want to be part of the solution, do you?
Absolutely not. Absolutely not. And again, when I said that in November, obviously none of this had come out.
Tim Shea of Castle Rock is the Coloradan who's facing charges. He and his wife were defending that crowdfunding project right here 2 years ago. And apparently a year ago, they still had close access to President Trump. Amanda Shea, Chief Financial Officer of We Build the Wall, posted a photo with the president to Instagram almost 1 year ago exactly. In the caption, she claimed that President Trump, quote, had a lot of questions about the wall we the people built through We Build the Wall. He was impressed. You did it. You set a new record for our Word of Thanks microgiving campaign. Next viewers donated more than $90,000 to support the Wildland Firefighters Foundation. That's the nonprofit that assists the family of injured and killed firefighters in the Mountain West. Cannot tell you how many wildland firefighters and their families have reached out with gratitude over the last few days. And you all combined sent this tremendous message that Colorado has their back, has their families back, while they work to protect lives and property in our state and others. I'll be back on Wednesday with another idea of how we can pool $5 from a whole bunch of us and support some vital nonprofit work in our state. Denver looks like 420 every day. We find an answer to a next viewer's vital question. When will the smoke clear? And taking the mic to clear up something else.
All black actors will tell you in this town, there's often this misconception that there's no black artists in Colorado.
They're here, and there's something they'd like you to hear. Next. We keep tracking trends for you in Colorado's COVID-19 numbers. We give you the daily number and the trend, but we encourage you to focus on those weekly averages just so you don't get caught on the peaks and valleys. Trends continue to be encouraging. Yesterday, our positivity rate was just over 1.5%. Our 7-day moving average on positivity is at 2.7%. It was over 4% 2 weeks ago. And right now, there are 143 people in Colorado's hospitals with COVID-19. 7-day moving average for hospitalizations is just over 150. It's down from 200 2 weeks ago. Our next question comes from a viewer named Matt. With all the thick smoke from Colorado's wildfires and out-of-state fires hanging around the metro area, Matt wants to know when the smoke will finally clear. Matt, that is an excellent question. We turn to our in-house expert, meteorologist Corey Reppenhagen, for some help on this. Corey says that the smoke is not going to clear from the Front Range anytime soon. He connected with experts from the National Weather Service who think that it is likely that the smoke will stick around in Denver through September. The smoke that we're breathing in every day does not just come from Colorado's wildfires, it's also smoke that's come from Northern California's many fires. And a few of those California fires aren't expected to be put out until at least late October.
Another day with smoke, haze, poor air, and highs in record territory. 98 degrees in Denver today, 97 downtown. We tied the record. Triple-digit highs to the south, to the west. Temperatures will be as warm tomorrow. Just enough moisture coming in underneath the ridge that we're monitoring the potential for dry lightning in the fire zones and wind. Not going to see a lot of rain for lower elevations, but that changes at the end of the week. So an isolated foothill storm tonight, and then we see a same scenario play out again tomorrow. But it's Friday into Saturday that we see cooler weather and the best chance of rain from storms. So relief is coming. Partly cloudy, smoke, haze, and 65 tonight. Tomorrow, sunshine and 98. Smoke, haze, and bad air. Oh, that warm weather trend continues until Friday with temperatures cooling into the 80s and a good chance of rain from storms to end the week. Hang in there. It's coming.
We are experiencing the history that our grandkids will read about someday.
Women are different than men. Our voices are different. Our experiences are different. We may experience the same thing, but we have different outcomes.
Black Coloradans, step up to the mic. Next. What's Steve Steger doing driving the car in that ad? Anyway, Amplify is a project that aims to turn the mic over to black artists in Colorado to share their view of this moment in history. Our Byron Reed went to the Arvada Center for the Arts to Amplify.
Well, I've been acting for over 40 years.
For local actor Adrian Martin Fullwood,
I got up enough nerve to go on stage maybe about 25, 30 years ago.
The art of making an impact started when she took up her passion.
And it's a fulfillment. You know, you are telling a story, and the story that you're telling, it has to be truth.
Martin Fullwood is part of a virtual series called Amplify. The videos are helping to give a voice to Black men and women artists through music, performance, dance, and spoken word.
Amplify gives us that stage, that opportunity to tell the story of what we're experiencing right now.
Oh, my friends, forgive me.
The series debuted at the end of June to give local Black men the opportunity to be heard. Soon after, producer Betty Hart came up with the idea of a second season featuring all Black women.
Women are different than men. Our voices are different. Our experiences are different. We may experience the same thing, but we have different outcomes.
There's no excuse to say that we don't exist.
15 local artists like actor Elijah McClain had up to 5 minutes to express whatever they want through whatever avenue they choose as a way of speaking out against racism.
I've gotten incredibly lucky in my career, made history here playing Sleeping Beauty as a Black actress. However, there is still just a lack of representation when it comes to the work, especially for Black actors.
These local artists say the episodes will let Black voices be magnified with the hope that others will pay attention.
I think it's incredibly important for people to just get a glimpse into our world, to the things that we experience.
For Next,
it's exactly the truth. It's what everyone needs to hear.
I'm Byron Reed.
The most Colorado thing we saw today made me insanely jealous and quite confused at the same time. That and your feedback next. The most Colorado thing we saw today is a road trip right in the heart of fire season. There's really only one way to do that. Robert spotted this train of vehicles and watercraft on Sunday. That would be a fire truck pulling an RV, pulling a boat. Robert Shea saw this on I-25 near Firestone. I'm not certain what's happening here. It's clearly a lot. Also, where does one get a fire truck? I was also not aware you could tow stuff with a fire truck. You don't see that every day. And as they will tell you very seriously on the other local news channels, more questions than answers tonight. But for real though, I mean, where do you get an old fire truck? The Colorado State Firefighter Association tells us you can buy an old fire truck just like you can buy an old police cruiser. They're sold at auctions and they're sold direct by the departments when they're done with them. They do take out the hoses and they take out the sirens and the decals, so all the fun is gone. And since most fire trucks weigh in the neighborhood of 50,000 pounds, you have to have a CDL to drive it. So something different on feedback tonight. We've been joking on social media throughout the weekend about the funny mispronunciations and weird phrases that our kids have. Like anytime my older daughter does something, she's like, mailed it. Neil says his grandson asked to play on the trampoline all the time. Dr. Jen Greenfield, I love this one. She says, my kids used to call gravity, gravity, which just seems logical and right. And Angela says that when her son was about 2, he'd get so excited to see Kermit on Sesame Street and would say, look, it's Kermit the F word. And she would say, Kermit the Frog, and he would say, yep, just like I said. See you next time.